that parents still think it's like a faraway problem. I don't think they realize how close to home this is hitting. Just in this past year, I know of several local cases in our state where youth have experienced sextortion or other forms of online exploitation, and some of those have resulted in very horrible mental health outcomes for that youth. Some of them, unfortunately, have resulted in a loss of life.
Every parent thinks it happens to somebody else's kid until it doesn't. Predators are getting smarter and more sophisticated, and technology is giving them better tools. And our children are walking straight into that world every day. Silence won't protect them. Talk to your kids before somebody else does. Protecting our kids starts with one uncomfortable truth. Yes, it can happen to our family. We have to act, protect our children, understand the dangers, and begin a conversation about sextortion, exploitation, and the technology they use every day.
You know, what if the greatest danger to our children isn't that parents don't care, but that parents don't believe it could happen to their child? We've talked sextortion before with Terry Markham from Uprising, Wyoming, and we know how devastating sextortion can be to children. We know how devastating it can be to parents and to families. And we know that predators are out there waiting and devising new ways to reach our children. But today we talk about hope. Hope in terms of what we can do as parents, hope in terms of what we can do in our communities, in our state, in our nation, in our legislature. Welcome, Terry. We're glad that you're here, and we've had a lot of comments about our first podcast on sextortion. But since our last interview, what has changed the most?
Well, since today we're really talking hope, I'm excited to tell you one huge change is we've actually had some landmark cases that have happened in the US that are holding big tech accountable. And I think that's setting a precedent. So if you haven't seen the news, definitely look it up. But in March of this year, there were not one, but two huge cases, one out of California, one out of New Mexico, that were basically suing Meta. And this is not something new. We've had a lot of people try to sue Meta for the harm that they've caused to children. And what was different is this time, both of those cases were successful. And this now sets a precedent that Meta and some of these platforms are knowingly harming our youth, and they're not doing anything about it. And so we're hoping within the field that this will start to change the landscape of things, because one of the places that's the least accountable, I would say, is the technology where all of this is happening on. So that was pretty exciting. And I don't often get to share good news when it comes to sextortion. So we've been excitedly telling everyone about that.
But one thing that's really evident, that when I talk to other parents or people just in general, they believe that they're good parents. They believe that this sort of thing will not happen.
I think in general, it feels like it is tipping a little. I think most parents that I speak to now, they know that this is something that could happen. But I find, especially here in Wyoming, that parents still think it's like a faraway problem. I don't think they realize how close to home this is hitting. Just in this past year, I know of several local cases in our state where youth have experienced sextortion or other forms of online exploitation, and some of those have resulted in very horrible mental health outcomes for that youth. And some of them, unfortunately, have resulted in a loss of life. And I don't think the parents realize that this is a problem here and now. And it doesn't matter if we're in tiny little Lusk, Wyoming, or you're in, a big city. It's happening to all of our kids.
What do you think the biggest mistake good parents are making in this subject area?
I think the biggest mistake is just not facing it head on and having conversations about it early and often. Like I have even, close parent friends of mine who know the work I do. They're really well informed. They know some of these issues that are happening, but they're still thinking, well, my kid's 10 or 11 and they're not even on tech. I haven't given them a phone yet. So they think they don't need to have these conversations, but they don't realize that it doesn't matter anymore what age your kid is. They are surrounded by tech. If you're not giving them the phone, that doesn't mean their friend at school doesn't have the phone that's not being monitored. There's just a million different ways that kids could end up in online spaces, and a lot of them are through other people, through their peers, maybe even just happening upon something by accident. And so I think it's a huge mistake not to start talking about this early. And I think that there's really age-appropriate ways where you can start to have these conversations with really young kids. And then, of course, as that kid grows in maturity level, and you as the parent, hopefully you know your kid the best of when you need to start increasing those talks or including more sexualized nature and stuff of some of these crimes into that. But I think a big mistake is waiting till, they're 12, they're 13, or whatever that number is you have in your head. Because the truth is that the number, even from a generation ago, is completely skewed now with how rapidly technology is advancing. And we're still parenting maybe the way we were parented and on the timeline that we were parented on.
I coached a young woman who was a kindergarten teacher, and she said 6 out of her 16 children in kindergarten had cell phones. And that to me is frightening, because it just seems that the younger that kids are receiving cell phones, for whatever reason that is the greater risk that they have if this discussion is not being made. What are parents assuming is safe but isn't?
I think a lot of parents assume that these apps that are marketed and games that are marketed for young kids are generally safe. And some of them, yes, do have different parental controls and different levels of safety. But the fact is, any sort of social media, any sort of game that has any sort of messaging or chat feature could be a danger. And you might have all the parental controls in the world on that. But guess what? Those exploiters, they understand those apps and games better than we do, better than our children do. And they understand them to the point where I've seen exploiters coach kids on how to get around parental controls, how to get a burner phone that their parents don't know about, how to get past the Bark app that their parents put on their phone to monitor their usage. And then again, you're not taking into account, what if your kid uses someone else's phone because they know you're watching their phone? Of course, I think most kids aren't trying to be that sneaky, but if all their peers are on something and they're feeling left out, they might resort to something like that because they want to feel that same connection and, be on the end that all their friends are. And so I think that's where we, as parents and the safe adults around our kids, we sort of have to accept our fate in a way. I think we still need to limit technology. It's devastating to me to think of kindergartners with their own cell phones.
Yeah,
I think hold off as long as possible, because once you give your kids that tech, you can't ever undo it at that point. So hold out as long as possible, but then you need to be proactive. Like, you need to know your kids are going to want the same things other kids have. And sometimes you might just explore, okay, how can we use this safely? What are the dangers here? How can we talk about this and pull it out into the open? That way, maybe your kid might have the maturity level to be on one of those apps. Maybe you don't let them on everything, but maybe they get to pick one and you guys learn that app inside and out together. You're on it, you're on their friends list. I think that's a far better approach than just trying to deny everything, because that's when kids kind of go underground and they start sneaking and hiding stuff, is when we're just like, no, and we don't give them any explanation. We don't explain the why, then of course they're gonna want it, right? So I think sometimes kids might surprise you when you give them the why, and you're not just like, no, but you're like, here's what happens on this.
What warning signs are we missing as parents?
To me, the largest warning sign is just your kid acting out of character. So if you have a really introverted, shy kid and suddenly maybe they're being more promiscuous, or they suddenly have all these new friends, they're on social media all the time, and you've known them to be someone who's more introverted, more of a bookworm, that could be an indicator. Or it could be the total opposite. Maybe you have a really social child and now they're isolating, they're not going out to hang out with their friends as much. You know, that could be an indicator that something has happened and they're pulling away, they're scared, they're nervous. So I think any sort of large change in their behavior and just their personality, to me, that's the biggest clue. Because what I see over and over with this is that kids get into one of these bad situations, they make that poor decision the one time, exploitation happens, and suddenly they're too scared to tell anyone. They don't understand the gravity of the situation. They're embarrassed. They think they're gonna get in trouble. There's all these barriers to them actually disclosing that something bad has happened. And so then they're keeping it to themselves. They start isolating, and that's when those mental health effects start happening. It's because they're walking that alone, this horrible thing that's happening. Now they're facing it alone. And that's where I see a lot of the big harms come from. So I think we need to be thinking about what can we do to remove all those barriers of kids just coming to us when something bad happens, because chances are something bad is probably going to happen to a lot of our kids, like statistically speaking. Right now, I think it was almost 2 out of every 10 Wyoming youth out of the 3,000 plus that I have surveyed, 2 out of 10 have experienced exploitation or sextortion. Because kids that are busy being kids and doing regular kid things are less likely to be exploited in the first place. When they're off of tech and they're involved in school, they're involved with their friends, they're not glued to their phones, that reduces their risk significantly.
Could you give us a success story that proves that this intervention can work?
Since we had a really large case that it originated out of Laramie, and it was a 14-year-old who disclosed a situation. Turns out it was sextortion. And basically, when all was said and done, they found over 900 victims from this one exploiter. And when they finally tracked down where the exploiter was, he was in Malaysia. And normally that's where things would end, right? This person's not even in the US, we can't get any justice here. But they were able to work with FBI and Malaysian government, and they actually got this person arrested. This one brave child told, and who knows how many thousands you've just prevented from experiencing that same horror that you went through.
It seems to me like over the last 8 months since you and I first met that things are happening more in our big state. Is that the case across America? Do you think that this intervention is becoming more and more popular, seeping into the school districts and seeping into communities?
I do. I think that more and more people are talking about it. We're getting stronger protections in place nationally, statewide. But I also don't feel like it's slowing the problem down yet. I don't think we've reached that point.
Are predators becoming more organized and more sophisticated in what they're doing?
Always. Unfortunately, always. It feels like they're always a few steps ahead of us. They come up with new creative tactics to reach children. And now with the prevalence of AI and how easy it's become to use and access, I think that has just amplified and heightened everything. Because now, you know, we used to teach kids, hey, just FaceTime with someone and you can ensure that you're talking to a real person who's your age. I can't tell them that anymore because there's literally apps where an exploiter can make themselves look like a 14-year-old girl and they could be a 38-year-old man and they can have a whole conversation with you and it looks that realistic. You know, it used to take an exploiter, you know, potentially hours to study your child's social media profile and create a fake profile that mirrors theirs so that when your child looks at it, they're like, ooh, this person likes all the same things as me. I should be their friend. Now they can crank out those profiles in seconds. They don't have to spend any time. So I think we get better, but so do the exploiters, and it's this constant battle.
The first step in protecting our children is believing that this could happen to them, correct?
Correct.
What's the next step after knowing it's a possibility?
Talking to your kid. You know, so I don't think you're going to cause any harm by starting to talk to your kids about the harms that are out there, starting to prepare them. The more that they know leading up to being able to have access to technology, you know, that's how much more well-informed they're going to be when they finally get the technology. And maybe they'll stop pressing you for more access to technology if these are just regular conversations you have. At some point, when you do give them technology, you've got to help walk that road with them on how they can safely use it. Some really good rules of thumb: if your kid has an app or a game, you need to have that same one on your own device because you need to learn to use it. You need to know all the ins and outs of it. You need to be friends with your kid on those apps. That way you can see what they're doing also. And that's what the ICAC agents also share, is whatever your kid has, you should have. I'm pro all approaches. You know, I'm teaching my girls everything. I'm trying to have all those preventative conversations. I'm trying to talk about all the things so that they feel open and welcome to come to me with anything that happens to them. I tell them all the time, like, I'm your safe adult, yes, but who are other safe adults that you have who aren't family members? If you need a safe adult, if your friend needs a safe adult, I can be a safe adult for them too.
Are there any other regulatory apps that you're aware of?
Yeah. Tons of them.
There's tons of them.
I think Bark is probably the most user-friendly, widely known one.
Is that B-A-R-K?
Yep. And I love Bark, but I am a huge proponent of there is not a safety app or feature in the world that replaces having these conversations with your kid.
I agree.
They are great tools to add to your toolbox, but like I said, when that exploiter knows how to coach them around it, or when your kid can just use someone else's phone or get a burner phone from their friend, like, you still have to have the conversations, because what if they're accessing technology on another device that's not protected? I'd say if you are looking for more information on human trafficking, sextortion, exploitation of children, you can definitely check out our website, which is uprisingwyo.org. There's a whole section just for youth on there. There's resources that you can download and access, and that's how you can get in touch with me if you're looking to bring a training to your community.
This is an area that we're very concerned about. We want you to be active and concerned about it as well. Know as much as you can about what's going on and how to protect our children. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.